Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're going to be talking about how angels react to praise, because I don't want myself, any of you, let's say things go well. We figure out the way to live life, or God or the divine gets us, drags us in the right way, and we end up achieving this state of mind in life that we call heaven. We don't want to get in there and make a major faux pas, say something to an angel that's going to alienate ourselves or cause a divinely awkward moment, right? How does an angel react to praise? Actually, I'm kidding. That's not why we're doing this. Why we're doing this is because in looking at the way spiritual things behave, you get this clear read on how the mind works for all of us. That the manifestation in the spiritual world that Swedenborg describes is like the map of what goes on inside of us. So we can take something like how do angels react to praise and learn these life lessons from it, which can then be applied in the thing that really matters. Let's free ourselves, free everyone else from negativity in all its forms that keeps us down, keeps us upset, when really the truth is out there, and the truth is good enough that if we just knew it how it was, we'd be free of every little concern we have and of so much of the pain that we go through. So angels, being pretty far along this journey to seeing things how they are, let's pay attention to what they do, because that's a pretty good teacher, right? This is actually continuing, because last week we did a series, we did an episode in this mini two-part series about the thing everyone believes in heaven. And we were looking at how it's this acknowledgement that good and truth and life, the good stuff, the heaven actually comes from God rather than it coming out of the self. So this looks further at how angels make that a part of their life. You can download the book yourself. It's Heaven and Hell. We're at the middle of subsection 9. You can see I'm not kidding. We were doing this stuff earlier. That was my little note to self, because, I could go on and on. Now, we do get to continue. Angels support their belief that the Lord is the source of every bit of life by observing, we have one life, right? You've heard that. So how do they put that together? Observing that everything in the universe, or in all of reality, goes back to what is good and what is true. And everything that applies to everything applies to us, because we're part of everything, and the things work in little nesting doll layers like that. Our volitional life, the life of our love, what you care about, goes back to what is good. So underlying that somehow, what is good, and the divine, that whether you say God or what is good, God is what is good. While our cognitive life, the life of our faith, or everything that we believe, particularly the things that are accurate and filled with love that we believe, goes back to what is true. Since everything good and true comes to us from above, it follows that this is a source of all of our life. You have goodness and truth as the bedrock from which we pull the little activities of our own minds. And so, because we're so dependent on that, angels say this is one more reason. Please ignore that person I was trying to draw. There's one more reason to say everything is coming out of God. We saw before last week that this is a key to the happiness of heaven, is to lay aside the desire for to be better than others, the selfishness that comes with misappropriating the divine stuff to ourselves, this divisive, competitive world we build in our minds for ourselves that leads and feeds the weather system that is these black clouds, the cause of all this misery we're trying to get out of. So we're saying, let that go. Here's one more point that proves that, look, you are a partnership with God, and that's actually good. That's better than being this isolated thing. You're going to see what life can be like when we're not obsessed with keeping score. And so how does this react? How does this affect, let's say, how does this affect angels' ability to accept praise? Because angels believe this, they decline any thanks offered them for the good they do. And angels do a lot of good stuff. So Swedenborg must have seen this in experience. Like, oh, you did this awesome thing, thank you. But they say, no, like, don't thank me. And actually, it goes farther. In fact, they feel hurt and withdraw if anyone gives them credit for anything good. So this is not just, that, refusing praise when you actually want praise. Where you're, oh, no, it wasn't me. I think a lot of other people and I'm just standing on the shoulders of people, but yeah, it's not that. It's not actually the angel saying, well, there's this divine law here that says no credit. It's the no credit bill, and we have to follow it. We signed here at the bottom. We actually read the terms and conditions. So we have to refuse this, but really thank you because it does make me feel awesome. They want to get out of there. Why? Why would you do that? Well, it's because it's not all of this talk in Swedenborg about how we're not the source of what's good and true. This is not to destroy our sources of happiness. This is to get us to understand that what looks like a friend, like this, our self-image here, and in the negative sense of self-image, there are times, and Swedenborg says, especially for little kids, it's good to build up this positive sense of self-image. But as we start to try to figure out how do we untangle this stuff, our conception of the greatness of who we are actually is so entangled with all this. Not that that God isn't going to give you this perpetual feeling of doing good things, not that you're going to have value and feel that, but something about the way we currently want to play the rat race and want to put ourselves above people. We don't realize how much that creates the conditions in which this head weather takes us over. Look, the screen is almost all head weather right now. That's how bad it's getting. They know that taking this credit is going to destroy their sense of happiness. This is done. This is not because, okay, the boss says we have to not. They can see, no, I don't want that. It's like, I don't want to put that chemical in my body. I know I feel terrible after I have it. And here's some of why. It bewilders them to discover that people can believe they are wise on their own or do good on their own. And what is this? And it is like a strange concept that is very hard to get a clear sense of. What do you mean own? Because I'm doing things, right? Aren't I talking right now? Aren't you? I don't know what you're doing right now, but aren't you doing it? What does it mean, not on their own? And what's the distinction, and why all this negativity against the self? We're also created, though, to feel like we're autonomous. And what's going on here? I think these next two sentences do something for us there. Doing good, and here's the difference. Doing good for one's own sake, in their language, cannot be called good, because it stems from self. Doing good for its own sake is what they call good from the divine. So it's really, these phrases are the same. It's just this one word that changes. One's own sake versus its own sake. This, they say, is the kind of good that makes heaven. Because this kind of good, the its own sake, no, not apostrophe, my apologies, is the Lord. So what's the difference between good for one's own sake and good for its own sake? It's, according to Swedenborg, it's heaven and hell. The difference between heaven and hell. So if you, and this is the angelic state of mind that you're trying to get to, that gets you in the place where why would you ever refuse credit for doing something good? Isn't that isn't that fun and good? This is why, because when you're in heaven, not that you can't feel good, although when you get to this point, it sounds like you can't feel good, but about doing something good and receiving a bit of credit. And he does talk about angels cycling through states, and when they're in their lowest states, they are more looking for, like, they do more like praise associated with the good things that they do. But when they get into these higher, happier states, they don't want it, because what's the bedrock of the happiness in heaven? What are you drawing your energy from? It's the love you have in your heart. The thing you care about the most is good for its own sake. And we see this in flashes. If you get a sense, you have two strangers that are interacting, maybe you're hearing a news report about it or you're seeing it happen, and one is doing something unfair to the other. The desire to rectify that, even though you don't have an attachment to either of them, to just know what is right is for this not to happen to this person. That's just the right thing. And then further thinking about if I'm taking this action, even at cost to myself, knowing the happiness that it creates in others and how that will lead them to something good, that is loving good for its own sake. Loving good for one's own sake, or for my own sake, would be, in both of those situations, like, am I doing something for this group of people? Am I doing something between these two individuals? My main calculus is, what does this lead to for me? Is like helping these people. If the thing that really, this is what I have to check in order to go do this thing, is, in the end, am I going to get praise out of it? Is it going to increase my status? Helping these two people, am I helping because this person reminds me more of myself in some way? That's what one's own sake is. And that is essentially turning inward, and taking credit is a form of that. Because to angels, you would think, oh yeah, one of the greatest things is to do something cool, and then you get the praise for it. But to angels, the joy, the deepest, the full joy in the act is knowing the good it's going to accomplish. And to get the praise on yourself is less enjoyable. It actually saps the joy, because it gets them thinking about themselves rather than thinking about what you're doing. Which is so true, because the more you're thinking about yourself, even as you do things that work, the more you build up this conception of, okay, I'm so great, the more that thing is fragile, and as soon as something goes wrong, the more stressful it is to maintain. Whereas if you're doing something for a cause, you can breathe and you can rise and fall with successes and failures. It's just like we get little flashes. I could believe that this can, you can extrapolate this out to the level in your mind, to the level that angels get it, because there must be some good reason that they're saying, like, whoa, like, don't point that thing in my direction. I'm not in it. I wouldn't even want it, because what I like so much more is I want to do this thing for you because I knew how it would make you feel, and I knew what it would do for you. And that is the coolest thing in the world. And isn't that really seeing the situation how it actually is? Because there are two players in the situation. It's just like you actually have the lights turned on and can tell what the thing is from a higher perspective. Of course, that's the reason you do it. Spirits who during their earthly lives had convinced themselves that they were the sources of the good they did and the truth they believed, or who had claimed these virtues as their own, are not accepted into heaven yet. This is the belief of all who place merit in good deeds and claim to be righteous. And I do think heavy on Swedenborg's mind as he's writing this were a lot of people in the religious community of his day who would very visibly do things that qualified as, charitable acts, and thought they would be rulers in heaven because of that. But actually, that doesn't make you a ruler in heaven. Angels avoid them. You say, I don't want to be around that mindset. Where you're using something, and this is sort of preempting the next sentence, but you're using something that's meant to be public domain and for the use of everyone. The doing of good is meant to lift everyone, and you're using it to raise yourself. You've got the thing backwards. In fact, things get pretty harsh here. They regard them as stupid and as thieves. Stupid because they're constantly looking at themselves and not the divine. And thieves because they take from the Lord what is actually his. It's interesting to say, if I'm looking at myself and not at the divine, that's actually like I'm out of touch. Like, what does it mean to be stupid? I could definitely teach a class on that. It means you're out of touch with what's real. And so to focus on ourselves only when we're this part of this much larger network, and really we're the supporting cast to the story of what goodness and truth is trying to do in the world, which is, of course, if I'm channeling good actions, then everybody works well with me. As soon as I start channeling bad actions, then everyone doesn't. It's the what's coming through me that makes it so that I'm a contributing or not contributing member of whatever group I'm in. Looking at yourself and not at the divine is out of touch. And then thieves, because they take from the Lord what's actually his. The Lord is the Lord's okay, you can have it, but you're not using this in the way that's going to actually help you, and it's going to help everyone else. They stand in opposition to heaven's belief that the Lord's divine nature in angels is what makes heaven. And we just looked at that thoroughly in the previous show. That opposes the thing that makes heaven harmonious. How do you take all these people and get them all to live happily together? How do you take a whole group of all kinds of different minds and hearts and have them not only glad to live together, but each person becoming happier because of the next person? This characteristic, this, hey, we're gonna flush the system of this competitive credit thing and give it all to God. That is a huge part of how that infrastructure can take that load of people. This is how we were meant to work together. This was the plan. If people are in heaven or in the church, they are in the Lord, and the Lord is in them. This is the state of mind. This is the state of mind. This is the state of mind in life after death. This is the state of mind here. When we get to this, love matters more than self. They're in the Lord, and the Lord is in them. This is what the Lord taught when he said, "Abide in me, and I will abide in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me." Isn't this is very intense cohabitation talk here. It's like, how can you have that much of a partnership? I am the vine, you are the branches. Now, doesn't that become just obviously clear? What is a branch? If you're ever, and I guess if we're talking about the Lord being the vine, I shouldn't be talking about yanking vines out of the ground, but occasionally where I live, there are species of vines that will kill the trees that they're climbing up. And then the trees will fall on your house. So sometimes you've got to get those things down. If you pull out a branch off of a vine, the branch isn't going to do anything, right? If you think about our connection to God in that way, it's distinguishable. It's a branch, but it's so dependent on its connection to the whole. Those who abide in me and I in them will bear much fruit. But without me, you can do nothing. And even what I want to focus on, though, is this thing here. The fruit, what we're getting to. Because if you spend all your time thinking like, okay, who's the best branch on the vine? Who's more important, the vine or the branch? What is it? It's all a bunch of nothing. If we're talking about the fruit, and the fruit being what is done that helps, the good constructive things, the good things that come out of that partnership, if that's what matters, the thing you can actually eat, the thing that can actually nourish people, of course that's what it's about. All of this, like the branch and how many leaves does this branch have, which branch is the best branch, it's just, you're just chasing your own tail, right? This allows us finally to conclude that the Lord dwells in angels in what belongs to himself. That would be the goodness and the truth. And therefore that the Lord is the sum and substance of heaven. This is because the good from the Lord is the Lord within and among them, since what comes from him is himself. Accordingly, the good from the Lord, and not anything of their own, is heaven for angels. So mystical, right? This is an intense. Okay, so you spend all this time cultivating this sense of identity, but then how do you place the sense of identity side by side with this idea that everything comes from the Lord? And maybe it's an easy leap for you. I mean, maybe you can think of this as the picture when it's just the self, when we're blocking out the reality that this sun is here. What we're actually headed towards, though, if we decide, okay, if instead of self I look at, I'm a branch, like I'm a part of a larger whole, what does that start to do to, let's say this line here is the belief that, you're not important. Suddenly you are important because you have this place in this greatest machine that exists. Suddenly there's this part over here that's like, hey, this person, I'm angry at them or something. If you start to realize that even your life is a gift from God, this completely changes interpersonal feelings. And everything else that has leverage on you, I don't know what your lines are, but I do know that the more we lean into these ideas of God, God's love, God's life, giving us the goodness and truth that makes us who we are, that suddenly changes the perspective, or it has for me. And that the things that you then start to believe when you have that framework, the thoughts and feelings that come to you, they are 100% more expansive and more freeing and more exciting. And it's not that you disappear. Swedenborg makes this fascinating claim that actually the more angelic you get, the more you feel a heavenly sense of identity, that you feel more and more like your own person, even as you realize, and we've done other shows about this, even as you realize the intimacy of your connection with the vine that you're on, you are able to be a better, more distinct branch. And it's not that heaven is, there are some belief systems that say that, when you reach some kind of heaven or enlightenment or whatever it is, you kind of meld into one. Not that you couldn't have that experience at times, but Swedenborg is very careful to say that you continue to be you and you become more and more you. But it's just like the cells in the body are all very, very distinct. Right? If you start having that lipid layer around the outside break down, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But yet, even though the form is distinct and each one is its own, how much of a one is the body? It's a unity of different elements together, and that actually that's the happiest position you can be in. When you have this sense of you, but yet know you're part of the whole at the same time, and you're made whole from that, and you want to give yourself completely to the whole, yet you're still yourself, so other people can do things for you. That is the best scenario that can exist, according to Swedenborg, and I could see it. And it certainly creates a better scenario for the thoughts and feelings of the mind, and just gives the negative vines of the evils and falsities that try to get at us, there's nothing for them to hold on when we've got that in our hearts, and that's the news from heaven. Hopefully that helps you. Hopefully that allows you some freedom as you work through whatever's getting you down this week. Please like and subscribe. That gets this show out to other people. It's crucial for the continued success of our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I love getting to just think through this stuff with you. Let me know in the comments what you think about it, and let me know if you have ideas that go beyond mine, interpretations, or something to contribute, because that is... we were just sitting here talking about how everyone receives love and truth in their own way. How does your love and truth see this? What's the potential in this idea to free us? Let me know, let our team know, and let the other people who watch the video know, because they're going to come watch those comments, get a lift out of that. Thank you so much, and let's talk more soon.